season and guys fighting for jobs and the always important second preseason game. And, of course, the Orioles really engaged in one hell of a pennant race right now. The Toronto Blue Jays began the week on the top side of that, but here come the Red Sox to town. And here to talk not just Red Sox, but this guy's got a little special place in my heart. I think we've only done radio together one time. I'm tracking him down as much as the Patriots play the Ravens and the Orioles play the Red Sox. He is Kevin Walsh. He is a TV broadcaster for Comcast Sportsnet New England and NECN. He is the author of now 3 books, including The Perfect Catch and Follow the Dog Home, and a book that we're going to talk about here because it involves my wife and our struggle and magic and life and death and all of that good stuff. We welcome Kevin Walsh back in. You can follow his journey at Twitter at Kevin Walsh TV. First things first, how are you, my friend? How's life up there in Beantown right now and summertime when the lobster's going on sale?
It's really hot here. I mean, usually we say that summer is our respite from really tough winters up here, but this has been a tough summer. We got a serious drought going on, and temperatures, I think 3 of the last 4 days were in the high 90s with oppressive humidity. So this is more your kind of weather down in the mid-Atlantic states, and I can't wait to give it back to you because I've had enough.
All right, so I'm going to tell the whole story, and I had to tell my wife about this earlier before I had you on because you and I have not really caught up again. You came up to me in the press box at Foxborough a year and a half ago when Joe Flacco had the 2-touchdown lead, and the secondary didn't hold up, and you knew my wife had survived the bone marrow transplant, and there's other members in the media, Karen Garegian, who is a bone marrow survivor from 20 years ago. I mean, amazing, miraculous things. But you have your own story with the bone marrow registry. It does not have the ending that my wife has at this point and meeting her donor, which she's about to do in 2 weeks. I thought it was really sort of cool to reach you and have you tell your story because I don't think you've told it. I know it's a very, very difficult story for you to tell, Kevin.
Well, let's go back 20 years ago. I was a young news anchor and reporter in Honolulu, Hawaii for the CBS affiliate, the old KGMB station. And this was before I became a sports anchor and reporter, and I was trying to be the next Peter Jennings or Tom Brokaw of the world. And my life took me to the other side of the globe, starting in the U.S. territory of Guam and eventually the Hawaiian Islands. And eventually I made it back to the East Coast where my family roots are. And I came into work one day. It was just a regular day like any other. And the assignment editor said, you're going to do a story on a man who has leukemia. He's been searching for a bone marrow match for a long time. And he has this interesting story about a golf ball that he found in his basket. And the story is, it was a man named Chris Pablo, who sadly is no longer with us, but eventually found a life-saving bone marrow match in a man that had no legs.
Wow.
And that's kind of the end of his story. But the beginning of his story was he had been diagnosed 3 weeks prior, and he knew he was in trouble. He was Filipino, and I think anybody that knows anything about bone marrow matching knows that it's much trickier for people who are minorities to find a match than it is for an average white guy like me.
I tell my wife the reason she's alive, I tell people the reason she's alive is she's white. I mean, literally, there's just so many more white people on the red. I tell this story all the time, and it's something I had no knowledge of, and I'm sure you didn't have any knowledge of until you found a Philippine man who needed to survive, right?
Right, and his story was 3 weeks after he was diagnosed, and he worked in the medical industry. So you know how doctors and nurses kind of are their own worst patients because they know too much and they know what the odds are about certain things. He was going into this where he knew the odds were overwhelmingly stacked against him. And 3 weeks after he was diagnosed, he went to the driving range to hit a basket of golf balls because he was a golfer and also just to take his mind off the stress of what his future was going to be. And he got about halfway through his basket of balls, and there was one ball that he noticed in the bunch that just looked different from the rest. It was older. It was discolored. The kind of ball that you and I, if we were hitting balls at a driving range, we might not even hit it because it probably wouldn't fly all that well. But something about it compelled him to take a closer look. So he bent down, plucked the ball out of his basket, and he was turning it on his side to see what kind of brand it was. But he saw something else printed on the side of the ball. It was the words, "Beat Leukemia." Now, how that ball found its way in his basket instead of the baskets of dozens of other golfers who were at the driving range hitting balls and why that one different one found its way into his basket and what compelled him to take a closer look instead of kicking it aside or just whacking it away mindlessly, who knows? But it's really almost as if the ball found him.
Unbelievable. And so give me the story on the book and your journey with all of this, because that's the beginning, but the book takes some turns and doesn't have such a happy ending.
Right. Let me skip a couple steps here. So the reporter, who was an independent observer at first, was compelled by his story, and also there was a 2-year-old girl who also was searching for a bone marrow donor in the islands. Same thing, she was Chinese, though, so it was a big push in the Asian community of Hawaii to get more people to come out and register as donors. And finally, I rolled up my sleeve, and this was before we were doing swabbing. This was old school. I mean, this was 20 years ago.
Wow.
Where you actually had to get pricked, and you gave a sample of blood. And 4 years after I did that, the phone rang at my house, and I had turned up for a match for a 16-year-old boy. And not a perfect match, but a near-perfect match, and I was the only one in the world, and eventually I went to transplant on his behalf. So it's amazing. It all started with the discovery of a golf ball in a guy's basket, me coming to work, me getting the assignment, but really understanding as a golfer just how rare that find would be, and then just feeling some pull that I can't really explain other than I thought it was the right thing to do. And then my magical number coming up in the lottery, it was almost as if the hand of God reached out of the sky and just tapped me on the shoulder and said, I got a job for you. And I'll tell you, to get that phone call that you are the only person in the world that can do something, and it takes no skill. All you have to be is yourself and have a little bit of courage. And I went through it, and the only thing I would change about the process was the result, because the young man I donated to, he's sadly no longer with us. But I'm still in contact with his family. Social media has been terrific for that, and it's been 16 years, and I think about him a lot, especially in the summer, because that's when I donated, and it's really strange, Nestor. Sometimes I'll just see 16-year-old, because it's almost as if time had stood still in a lot of ways. He was 16 at the time, so as I was getting ready to go to transplant, when I look around, I see other 16-year-old boys. I'm like, I wonder if he looks like that. I wonder if he looks like that. And even to this day, I just look at other young men and I just think about what could have been if it all worked out.
Yeah, well, our stories become crazy, Kev. You know, we've found her donor about 5 weeks ago. We're headed over to Germany in a couple weeks to spend some time with him, and our plan is to bring him over here in the fall to see some football, see some basketball, and kind of hang out. So, and he's, you know, incredibly magnanimous, 23-year-old kid who saved my wife's life not once but twice. I mean, they called him back a year later, and, you know, they exchanged notes, but it turns out he never got the notes from my wife. He never knew she was alive. He didn't know she was alive until June 30th, you know, 5-6 weeks ago. So it's been quite a journey that we're in the middle of, and you pulled me on the arm about a year and a half ago and said, you know, buckle up, and at some point we would get to meet this donor, and my wife has now survived a second time, and we're going to meet this donor. So it's a small world after all. Kevin Walsh, he is from Comcast Sports New England, not Comcast Sports Mid-Atlantic, where we have our friends Cliff Brown and Brent Harris, who join us here frequently. He covers all things up there, Red Sox and the Patriots, and is a TV broadcaster up there. Has written 3 books. You can follow his journey at Kevin Walsh TV. And as heartwarming as the bone marrow registry, and as much as the information's out there, and we're trying to save more lives, the Red Sox are trying to save themselves right now here in Baltimore. And we can get into some sports radio here, Kevin. For the Red Sox and the Orioles to be playing meaningful games this far down the line, here in Baltimore, we have not had a real pennant race in a generation. Like, not one of these bunched up every day there's a new first place team and somebody's hot and somebody's not. New England's used to that at this point, but this isn't like stock that Red Sox fans are buying right now, right?
People ask me about this all the time, and they say, "Are you buying the Red Sox?" And my answer to that is no. Let's just cut to the chase. It's no. They're a good team, but what this team is missing is the nasty. There are 2 nasty guys on the team, and one guy has 1 foot out the door of retirement, and the other guy, he's getting older too. So that's Big Papi and Dustin Pedroia. They're a good team, but good is not good enough. And we've seen long stretches of time where the June swoon in which they played terrible baseball and let the Orioles back into the race and also the Blue Jays and surpassed them. And then they're capable of going on good runs. They just swept the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they won today 16-2. So they have these moments where they just tease you, but in the end, when it really comes down to it, who are the guys that bring the nasty? These are not the days of Pedro Martinez, of Curt Schilling, of Josh Beckett when he was really on top of his game, and some
Cowboy
others.
up, right? Cowboy up. Well, Kevin Millar, one of those guys, right?
You don't have a guy like that does that and gets everybody going and everything. It's a nice team with some nice guys, but what does nice do for you in MLB? Not much.
Well, and I would say they're having a nice offensive season and a nice surge of these young players from Bogart and Betts and Bradley, especially Bradley offensively. I looked up at one point in June, they were hitting 295 as a team, and I'm like, well, you can't do that, but they're still hitting 285 as a team at this point. They have hit the baseball, and they did things as they do every offseason to sort of augment, spend money, bring in the prettiest girls at the ball. And I think there's one thing that you understand being up there, and I think people from afar can look at it. It's different being a Red Sox. Ask Carl Crawford, ask Hanley Ramirez, ask, Adrian Gonzalez. All these guys that have been through there that have struggled with it a little bit, and sometimes for a Bogarts or a Betts or a Bradley, it can kind of eat them up a little bit.
It's not for everyone. If you want that competitive spirit, if you want to play for an organization that's going to at least spend the money and really put the pressure on the players, then this is the place for you. But look, this is a team that also finished in last place 2 of the last 3 years, won the World Series 3 years ago, and is now, I guess you could say, in contention, although I think they're paper tigers with it all. But the Carl Crawfords of the world and the Adrian Gonzalez's of the world, I can kind of understand that the pressure of the market might get to them, but at the same time, they did themselves no favors by saying this is really hard, and who likes a whiner? It didn't work out for them, but for those that can thrive in that and want the most pressure-packed situation, this is the place for you. And we've seen some people that have done quite well. Mookie Betts is having an all-star or is having an MVP caliber second half of the season and the total season. He's in the discussion for that. Rick Porcello, he's 16-3. He came over from Detroit, got off to a slow start, but he's won 12 straight games at home. He's undefeated at home, and that is hard to do, even though you're the home pitcher. Fenway Park is a tough place to play in. We've seen Xander Bogaerts, his batting average slip a little bit, and the same with Jackie Bradley Jr., but you got to look at this team that has a good core of young talent, and there's some good talent in the minor leagues that's coming up as well. Andrew Benintendi, he was called up just a week ago. He looks like he's the left fielder of the future, and Yohan Moncada he's now playing third base, moved over from second base to third, which is an obvious sign that they want him to work on a new position, and at some point he may get called up. So the future looks bright, but Red Sox fans want to know what's happening now, and they just seem like they're going to come up a little bit short.
Rodriguez and Gallardo in the first game, Price and Tillman in the second. I remember when the Red Sox always get together, a nice 3-4 game. These little 2-gamers that we got going on, and certainly the Price story continues to evolve, and these are the games that the Red Sox bought for $217 million. These big games at Camden Yards against the Orioles stud and Tillman and their sort of pseudo-ace. This is why you pay a guy $20 million a year, right?
Yeah, but David Price has not worked out. I mean, and what the Red Sox did, aside from breaking the bank, that's not new. But what they did in signing him to a long-term contract, for many years they would not sign anybody to a long-term contract that was north of 30 or was soon going to be in their 30s. He is 30, he might be 31 now, but because he's been going at it for a long time. How many throws are left in that arm? Now, he has times where he looks pretty good, but he has not been the dominant pitcher that he has been in the past, and he has been a big disappointment. And the fans are starting to get on him a little bit, too, because the thing about him is he's a nice guy, but he doesn't do himself a good service by he's polite to reporters. He's one of the easier baseball guys to deal with, but he's like, I'm trying. I'll get it next time. He doesn't seem as annoyed with his performance as the fans are.
I tell you what, the Pomerantz deal to me, look, I thought the Shields deal was good for the White Sox. I thought these early pitching deals that happened before the deadline, I thought it was a leg up. And certainly, as good as he had been in San Diego for a couple of months, he's been a different guy in a Red Sox uniform.
And maybe that's the pressure, too. Look, I had no problem with Dave Dombrowski pulling the trigger on that. He gave up the top pitching prospect in the Red Sox organization. But at the same time, the pitcher that he gave up, he was said to be 3 or 4 years away. Drew Pomerantz was having a career year with San Diego prior to coming over. Now, he has struggled. Now that we see him day in and day out, he's a big kid and everything, but he just doesn't bring the heat, and he doesn't bring the nasty. And right now, that's not looking like a very good deal. But look, sometimes it doesn't work out. I say go with the proven commodity over the prospect every time, because the Red Sox are good enough with a couple key additions. They can maybe get over the hump. And I say go for it now rather than waiting later. So it just didn't work out this time, and so far it hasn't worked out with David Price, and it might not as all, but Dave Dombrowski, he's got a set on him. He's not afraid to go all in, and I think fans can at least give him that much credit.
Well, and he certainly has a great pedigree of doing that. Kevin Walsh joining us here, TV broadcaster for Comcast Sportsnet New England, and also the author of 3 books, including The Marrow and Me, that you got to check out on Amazon. If you purchase that on the Give a Spit app, you will be helping our partners at There Goes My Hero. We're going to tell you more some things we're doing here in the fall for the Bone Marrow Registry. You can reach Kevin at Kevin Walsh TV out on Twitter as well. And he's not only up there with the Red Sox, but he's also up there with the Patriots. I'll get to that in 1 minute. But Ortiz last year doing the bout, any thought at all that this isn't the end for him? He certainly, where it stands right now, would go out one of the more decorated players, not just in Red Sox history, but to have this kind of a year on the way out, over 300, over 30 home runs, over 100 RBIs. Guys don't usually walk away from the game like that, but they usually don't have $200 million in the bank, and obviously a real chore for him physically to play the game of baseball right now, so much so that he'll never touch a glove again, right?
What fans don't see is what he has to do to get himself ready for a game. Now, you would see it if you were paying attention and you were there well before the game started and in the stands, but he comes out on the first base line, puts a towel down on the grass, lays flat on his back, and has a trainer come out and stretch him. Now, the whole thing about I stretch myself. You probably stretched yourself. When you have somebody that's stretching you, it's because you're not able to, or I don't know if it's a lazy thing. It's not a lazy thing. Other things about him are lazy, but he's 40 years old as far as we know. He could be even older, and he's there are a lot of miles on that tires.
But there's aren't a lot of guys who can hit 40 doubles and 30 home runs and driving 100 runs and hit 300 with that left. I mean, I have never seen anything like this.
You're right. If he had some wheels, it would be even better. But I think it's even painful for him to walk, and just what it takes to get him ready for a game and how he feels after a game. I believe him this time when he says this is it.
Well, even if it is it, you've got Patriots season, right? And I don't want to say the Patriots have usurped all the Red Sox thunder over the last decade, but certainly the Patriots never go off the back page, do they?
No, they don't. Today, well, check this out. I mean, you'll be interested. I was complaining about the weather earlier. The Patriots were supposed to practice this morning, but there is a feeling that Bill Belichick intentionally moved the practice to later in the afternoon when the heat index would be well above 100. And in Foxborough, it was 106 today. But that's Bill Belichick. That's what he does. He makes practice as tough as it can possibly be. So when playing conditions are tough on Sunday, the Patriots are usually the better prepared team for the adverse conditions. And it's going to be another year of good success. Tom Brady is suspended for the first 4 games. We all know why. Jimmy Garoppolo, it's his team for the first 4 weeks. And as much as people are keeping an eye on that, well, how good is he? What does he really do? The real story with the Patriots this year is going to be the defense. And if you look at it closely, and I do, as do other media members around here, there's been an organizational shift. They've been going much more defensive heavy, which may seem new in recent years, but if you go back to when they started winning all those Super Bowls early in Tom Brady's career, they weren't winning so much because of Tom. He wasn't the offensive juggernaut just yet. It was the defense that was winning games. And if you remember how the Super Bowl ended against Seattle, it was the defense that won the game at the end with Malcolm Butler and his great pick. And they have new additions, Jamie Collins at linebacker. You also have Dante Hightower. Jabal Sheard is an absolute force at defensive end. And they're stacked from front to back. There's only one position that's a question mark, and that's the other cornerback opposite Malcolm Butler. This is going to be, in my opinion, a top 5 defense for sure, and maybe even 1 or 2.
Now, look, you began this conversation telling me you wanted to be Peter Jennings or Tom Brokaw or host Nightline. Give me the whole lowdown as you see it over the last 18 months of Deflategate, having been in the middle of having the report about it with a weird, rabid fan base and a weird everything about it was weird, from the league office and what they were trying to do to Kraft, and sort of the backwards takedown of Spygate, and it's a lot more than meets the eye from a reportorial standpoint.
Here's the takeaway from it. When people want to have this debate about things, I just asked them the question. I said, well, what's your biggest issue? Do you want to know, did it happen? Was Tom Brady honest? Or was the handling of it all shabby? Because in the end, what I think people take away is what they want to take away. If they don't want to believe it, they'll come up with, well, it was handled poorly. The league has no credibility. They don't have this. They don't have that. And I'm like, well, do you think it might have happened? I'll just say this. There's evidence, then there's counter evidence. There's the Deflategate in context thing that's gone on and on. If you understand the human condition, and if you look at Tom Brady's behavior and the answers that he's given to certain media, look, Bob Costas asked him at the Super Bowl, when this is all said and done, do you expect to be completely exonerated? And he said, well, I sure hope so. There's a process going on here. Look, Nestor, if I accuse you of doing something that you absolutely didn't do, and you know you didn't do it, the first thing you're going to do is say, I didn't do it.
Well, like when Peyton Manning went nuts, right?
For bringing it up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, we have the destroyed telephone. We have his actions are not consistent with that of somebody that's telling the truth. They are consistent with somebody that is trying to hide something.
Well, that's how it gets the gate name. He doesn't get a gate if there's no cover-up, right?
and then it becomes a thing, well, how big of a deal is it, okay? If he really did something, he had some knowledge about it, what does it amount to? Does it amount to a speeding ticket? Does it amount to a traffic ticket? And in the end, is it really that big? What do you want to know? Do you want to know the absolute truth, or do you think it should have been handled better? And then before you even have the argument or conversation with somebody, you got to kind of define the boundaries, or else everybody is going to peel off in their corners. They're going to come out with their claws, and in the end, everybody's going to get all nicked up, and they're going to be upset about it.
Well, I spent a whole week talking about it in Phoenix last year, right, when the whole thing broke, and obviously the Ravens were in the middle of it. I mean, Harbaugh, Dean Pease, they've always said no, no, no. I say yeah, and I say Pagano was, I get that, and I get what the reputation was, but the biggest story for me were the running backs who told me that the benefit really wasn't to Tom Brady. The benefit was the Patriots never, ever, ever fumbled the football at home. And to me, that's really where the story is, right? That if you go to the history of that and why that never happens at a completely different rate than the other 31 teams as home teams in their own stadiums, that's when I start to think it really had an incredible effect on their ability to win football games at home. That's when I could see where every Pagano and every Harbaugh. I mean, look, the day I met you up there, Belichick was up there trying to confuse the officials. Like, part of the game plan on that series of plays was not just to confuse Harbaugh, but to confuse the officials. So
listen, there's no love lost for the Patriots around the league, and at the top of the list is jealousy. Everybody wants what the Patriots have, is their success. But some will say, and I'm not going to disagree with them, they haven't always won. In the way they conduct business around there, they just and it's true. I mean, this isn't a put on. They don't care what you think about them. They're doing their own thing. They're almost like the Miami Hurricanes from the Michael Irvin days, where they're like, "Hey, we're just going to do it our way, and you may not like it, and you don't have to like it, and we don't care that you don't like it." So they've kind of ginned up the resentment sentiment around the league. And then when this all comes out and others say, hey, well, this seems to have a connection here, this, all that, and everything. And the Patriots basically come out and say, well, no, we didn't do it, and you ought to just trust us and take our word for it. Well, then other people can bring up, well, what about Spygate? Well, what about that? Really? We should take your word for it? Why? I mean, have you given us reason to take your word for it?
Well, they also had a murderer running around there who was stupid enough to GPS locate himself while he murdered someone. So above and beyond all that, to me, that's still the most egregious thing that happened in the Patriots organization.
Well, look, I mean, he acted alone. Aaron Hernandez did. And I know some people will say, well, you should have known what you were getting into when you drafted him. He had a troubled past at University of Florida and even before. And I will give Bill Belichick credit for this. When that all came out and when it was all said and done, he had a news conference that was quite different than his usual news conferences. And he said he took responsibility for making the wrong decision in drafting him, or at least he said he bore some of the responsibility for it. And he offered his condolences to the victim's family, Odin Lloyd's family there, and it was a much different Bill Belichick. And I'll tell you, that is a chapter the Patriots really want to put behind them, and they did so by offering to take back all the Aaron Hernandez jerseys. And every now and then, Aaron Hernandez is still in the news, but he seems to have completely disappeared from Foxborough, and that's the way the Patriots want it.
Yeah, none of that stuck to the Patriots, and the Spygate thing, did, and it came back, I guess, on Deflategate. Kev, it's always great to catch up with you, man. I guess we'll still be at it next month, and certainly the Patriots and the Ravens get after it in December. It's going to be a good football season. Everybody's looking forward to that, too. I really appreciate you taking some time and talking about your bone marrow registry stories and journey and enlightenment yourself, and we'll be following your journey out on Twitter, Kevin Walsh TV, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Nestor, anytime, and blessings to your wife, and I'll be praying for you guys.
Hey, man, we're doing well, man. Hang in there. She's got that Red Sox spirit, at least for this week.
That a girl. All right, have a great day.
See you later. Kevin Walsh, TV broadcaster for Comcast Sportsnet New England, and he covers the Red Sox and the Patriots and the Bruins and the Celtics and all that good stuff. You can follow him at Kevin Walsh TV out on Twitter. You can find me in the bio, Toyota Audio of all 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear from wherever you are. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports. Towson, Baltimore coming back with nice mojo and vibes after the come-from-behind victory over the San Francisco Giants on Sunday, and the Ravens with the Indianapolis Colts this week for some more what we like to call fake football. This poor SOB locked himself down with NFL Network all weekend and watched fake football cover to cover. He is life liver, beer drinker, and E-Draft head editor at Sportsnaut as well as at Forbes. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Vincent Frank